Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to FemTech Fridays here at the Media and Innovation Lab at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. Today, we are so delighted to host Salim Malakouti. He is an incredible CEO of NOMA AI. This is a healthcare resource that is new, innovative, cutting edge, and growing, and we're going to hear all about it today from his perspective. Welcome, Salim. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Marie. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, just to kick us off, if you would briefly describe Noma AI for our audience, and then we'll get more into the details.
Yeah, of course. So Noma is a startup that's building an AI platform. Our mission is to really aggregate and collect data in real time at the bedside from different sources inside the hospital. And in real time, analyze the data with machine learning and AI and complex algorithms for to deliver to the providers, to the health systems at the bedside, real-time predictive patient monitoring solutions that allows us to help identify problems happening to patients before they happen and really create this vision that in the future our physicians will know what will happen before it's coming up and they are able to prevent them to really enable proactive care, but not for 10 years down the road and what complications or what diseases patients might have, but for complications in real time that might happen in 1 or 2 hours at the bedside. So it's really how we see ourselves growing as a company in the next decade.
Incredible. So, my understanding is that you were a computer science researcher, and now here you are, CEO of a healthcare startup that is specifically to support women's health and maternal health, which is so incredible and very much in line with our vision. Here at the Mill, we love to know your why. So, tell us your why of your path and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I think my path it's it really starts from kind of from childhood. I grew up in a family that my parents were clinicians. Almost everyone in my close family were clinicians, and sometimes and even often our dinner table conversations was about patients and diseases, and my dad was psychiatric, so it was sometimes about mental health, and sometimes about very severe mental health issues like schizophrenia. So I grew up thinking about these things and the problems that people are having, and then really on back of my mind I had a huge passion about it. But at the same time, I grew up with Star Trek and Star Wars and AI and the vision that one day was a dream, but now we pick up our phones and FaceTime people and holograms. So found myself drawn to technology, to computer science as I went to my bachelor's, and AI and robotics is a huge passion for me. So as I was trying to pursue PhD degree down the road in my kind of academic pathway, I really wanted to try to do something across kind of in the intersection of machine learning and AI and data science and healthcare, knowing what patients are experiencing, what people are experiencing, and then having the opportunity and to contribute to those problems and help make them better through use of AI and what was I passionate about was a significant draw for me to come and do a PhD in computer science. Um, I'm an immigrant, came from the other side of the world, from Iran, and I landed a PhD at this university called University of Pittsburgh, which is here in Pittsburgh, which kind of kept me for the next 13 years. And I started working with amazing researchers in computer science, like Milos Haskevich, who was my PhD advisor, and physicians across different care settings on various problems. And I think I was immensely fortunate and to land on unique opportunities that maybe most PhD students don't, and sometimes don't even like to do as researchers. For example, we were probably one of the first teams in a major health systems to deploy machine learning in real time on the
Oh.
academic side to monitor patients. That back then there was no fire. Integration
Mhm.
was a big challenge. So this PhD student had the opportunity to connect to the back end of a major EHR and develop from scratch its own systems for deploying these models. But that also gave me a huge opportunity and a unique position to learn what most people didn't do in the machine learning world. But also gave me the opportunity to know, hey, we can do this. The work that we do on the academic side, on the research side, doesn't only need to go to publications. They can actually go at the bedside. This is not just, oh, well, no, we're not going to let you do this with the EHR, or we're not going to let you integrate the data because these are so sensitive. We can actually do it without impacting the ongoing sensitive systems like the electronic health records that they're using on a daily basis, on an hourly basis for patients. We can do this in a safe, efficient way and actually bring these solutions to the bedside to even contribute to the saving of lives. And that really started the idea of NOMA and really building the technology and the work that we were doing on the academic side as an actual product that we can bring to the bedside for everyday real-time decision making. So it's been a combination of just this growing up, environment that you get exposed to, being fortunate, landing opportunities and working with amazing folks who are able to and willing to take the next step to do the next crazy thing. And that crazy thing came to this company that now we're hoping to be able to contribute to patient outcomes.
Well, Salim, your passion for health and healthcare and making lives better and extending life are so clear. I really appreciate the background that your parents are clinicians and that you had these dinner table conversations about all different types of health. I'm wondering what it was that led you specifically to maternal health generally and maternal hemorrhage specifically.
Yeah, I think maternal hemorrhage is one of those problems that you don't really understand much about. And interestingly enough, even though that is actually a lot more common than most people think, it actually happens to 5% of the patients. That's about 200,000 women every year in the country.
Mhm.
Um, we don't really think about it. I mean, physicians do certainly, but most people don't think about it. I remember when my wife was pregnant, and we were having our daughter, and uh, we the only reason I was thinking about these problems because I was in this company. But most people don't think, hey, I'm going to go to the hospital and have a baby, and I have to be worried about bleeding too much and hypertension. Most people think about, hey, how I'm going to put my dreamy kind of birth plan together. Like, what should be the music be? Um, and justly because it's such a huge moment for everyone's life. Like, it's a new chapter. Like, you're going to transition. At least for us, you're going to transition from a couple to now parents, and there's going to be this new person in your life that is going to change it. So you're embracing for that. But the reality is that you're going to experience problems, and you might not definitely, but you
Mhm.
might experience these problems it might change the direction. I remember when I was at the bedside, my wife, as she was delivering, she was bleeding a lot. Now she
Mhm.
ended up being safe, but knowing about maternal hemorrhage, I was standing there looking how much she's bleeding, and they were measuring the blood loss, and
Mhm.
the threshold was still pretty high, but at the same time there was still blood on the bed. And then you really like feel, oh my God, what does this mean? Like, where is she going to go? What is going to happen to her? And as a technologist, especially, I was almost feeling useless, but at the same time, I knew what could happen. So just the idea of, hey, we're going there for one of the most beautiful moments of your life, but some of the worst things in your life can happen, and there's almost nothing we can do to prevent it other than just wait and see, is immensely for me on unbelievable. And I think that's a passion for me to try to work on maternal hemorrhage as the first problem that this company tries to address or bring a solution for. It's just such a big moment that one of the worst things can happen, and we have an opportunity to change it. And I'm hoping we can do it.
Incredible. And thanks for sharing that personal story about the birth of your daughter and that feeling of helplessness and that feeling of awareness. And I know 5%, as you say, it might sound small, but it actually, given the population of our nation is huge. It impacts so many women and so many families. So, just for the sake of the audience, like what are the current protocols to deal with that? Is it I mean, because I'll just back up and say it sounds like what you're trying to do is really proactive. I'd love to hear about what I'm imagining more the reactive current protocols, just so the audience has some baseline.
Um, Fortunately, in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of change for maternal hemorrhage. Unfortunately, it hasn't changed enough, the problem, and the maternal hemorrhage is still one of the top three leading causes of maternal mortality, but it has impacted throughout these years and has been better. It has shown that there's an opportunity to make it better. It doesn't have to be a wait and see problem. Um, and well, what is the problem with maternal hemorrhage? And maybe I should first explain what is maternal hemorrhage.
Yeah.
Maternal
Yeah.
hemorrhage is severe bleeding of moms at the bedside. Uh, so essentially, what really happens is a mom who's delivering um, bleeds so much that they end up experiencing downstream problems like hemodynamic instability, hypotension, organ failure, and that can result in death of the mom.
Mhm.
Um, and and the only way to really right now to be able to intervene is to wait and see what happens.
Mhm.
And that's really the problem. Why is that the problem? Is because we just really don't have the tools to identify who is going to have maternal hemorrhage. What physicians look at right now is number one, blood loss. The problem with blood loss is really hard to measure it, number one. The most common tool right now across the country is called estimated blood loss, which is the more fancy word for guesstimation, so just eyeballing. And the method that everyone is moving to is called quantitative blood loss, which actually involves taking these sponges and clots soaked with blood and putting it on a scale and weighing the amount of blood. Now, if you do this perfectly, which neither of them is perfect, obviously, you're still waiting on a threshold, and that threshold
Mhm.
is at best an average for the moms. So by definition, some moms are going to be higher. Like we have different weights, we have different BMIs, we have different heights, we even have, like, you might be anemic, so you generally going to be in a dangerous zone with losing less blood than other moms. So now the other tools our physicians have are blood pressure. So you monitor the blood pressure, but the problem with blood pressure is that you typically lose about 30% of your blood before you change your blood pressure changes dramatically. Now,
Wow.
that's even worse in moms because of how pregnancy changes your physiologics.
Mhm.
Moms, like their body is very good at compensating blood loss or blood pressure. So that delay is even further down the road, delaying it furthermore. So by the time these things are measured and changed, it might be late. And that's really the problem. So what we are hoping to do is to leverage just AI and AHR and bedside monitors and data like that to bring proactiveness to this to the bedside. So yeah.
So it's proactive. It's not waiting until we have to take a measure from, potentially a sponge. Um, Talk to me specifically about the mechanisms that your technology works to take these proactive measures.
So we're actually bringing two products for maternal hemorrhage. And the reason for that, it was because we wanted to make sure there's really two parts of this decision making, and we want to make sure we can bring the solutions into the market, fitting the clinical workflows. I think a lot of the times, especially as a technician, I feel like I can say that comfortably. We are guilty of building an amazing technology and then coming to the physicians and asking them to change how they're thinking.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't capture, or we don't factor the problem of changing how people think and what they're
Mhm.
comfortable is actually sometimes harder than building the technology. So for us, what was really important is to bring the solutions in a way that fits the clinical workflow. And again, right now, the other piece of the workflow that I think I'm mismentioning is doing a triage or a risk assessment for patients,
Okay.
which essentially means the nurses or the physicians at the bedside, the first thing they do at the time of arrival, even if you don't know it, they look at about a checklist of maybe 2 dozen risk factors. And if you have one or two of them, you become either low, medium, and high risk. Now, if you're high risk, they're going to start ordering blood for you, escalate you to a high level of monitoring. They're really going to make sure that they are going to capture it, just from the practicality of it. The ideal is to do that for everyone, but it's impractical. Um, But the problem with the existing risk assessment tools is that they're missing half of the moms. So they classify these moms as low risk, but they end up hemorrhaging. The other piece of the problem is when they're capturing high-risk patients, the 90% false positive, which means
Oh,
90% of the moms who get classified as high risk, they're not going to bleed too much. They're going to bleed, but they're not going to bleed too much. So they're not going to have maternal hemorrhage. That impacts not only the effectiveness of the tools by missing 50% of the patients, but also the practicality of it, because most physicians know 90% of the patients are not going to bleed. So what we're bringing in the first phase is an EHR integrated AI system that we're integrating within the EHR. So we're pulling the data. They don't have to collect any more data. We're not going to disrupt any more workflows. And we're giving them back a clinical decision monitoring dashboard within the EHR. So from a physician standpoint, they get the same data point automatically, real time, more accurately. And we're capturing not only those risk factors that those checklists are looking at, which is mostly medical history, but we're also capturing demographics. We're capturing dynamic data like blood pressure change, lab results as the patient is in the hospital. And we're giving them a much more accurate risk assessment in real time that allows them to more effectively capture patients. Now, at the same time, there's the other factor to maternal hemorrhage. Now, it's not only about capturing patients and the risk of it, but also making sure you're doing the right thing at the right time and early. So if you're ordering blood, you have to make sure you're ordering blood for that patient. If the hospital needs a cell salvage device, which is really a device that takes the mom's own blood and filters it and give it back to the mom, it has to be ready. The technician has to be available for that patient. All of these result in delays, and in fast-paced environment of maternal hemorrhage, these delays can be tremendously effective. So really what we're trying to do alongside the AI, we're delivering solutions for reminding them, hey, this patient is high risk. It also has this other risk factor, and your protocol says that you have to do this, that, and that. To bring those real time at the bedside, all consolidated in one effective dashboard. So when you come to see what the patient's risk is, you also see what you need to do to really make sure the patients get the right level of orders, interventions, or monitoring at the right time. That's really how we look at it, as a comprehensive solution of not only bringing AI, but also bringing a suite of compliance and headhands to the bedside.
I love your methodological approach because what I'm hearing you say is not only are the metrics by which we're trying to identify these skewed, right? We're missing high risk patients or we're getting a lot of false positives on the other end of it. But you're really talking about being proactive in terms of the resources you would need on hand once you do identify an at-risk patient. I'm really curious to know what your conversations have been like with physicians and how they receive this type of technology.
I think one of the most important thing that was for us a factor in taking the first step and making sure we're building things in the way that the workflows work was essentially physicians. Again, going back to the concern of trying to change physician behaviors or anyone's behavior being one of the hardest problems, and as people who work in this space, my co-founder is a physician with 30,000 citations in the space. He's done many years of experience in building AI for clinical practice, and recognizing the hardship of changing those behaviors and mindsets. I think the fact that we've worked the way we work has been extremely helpful. We really come in with not a new solution, asking them to think differently. We come in bringing better solutions for the existing workflows and protocols. And I think that has been an escalation and a very helpful decision. As we're having this conversation, even sometimes if the conversation is starting a little bit more skeptical and conservative, and maybe they're holding back, like we had a conversation with the chief of OB at an amazing hospital, and I think the conversation started with we're working on many things right now, and we have to make sure we can bring one more AI tool. But as we started talking about how we do things and how we already align with the clinical workflows and how they don't have to come in and retrain the entire staff to think differently, that was a catalyzer for that conversation. Now, obviously, healthcare adoption is a long process, but knowing that we work the way they work and we're trying to bring efficiency in a streamlined and seamless integration path has been an effective approach into adoption of AI for us. And
Incredible.
and at least catalyzer for conversations.
Yeah, so on that, it sounds like you're already, I was going to say, where are you in the process? Is this being deployed in certain hospitals already?
So we're what we entirely like maternal hemorrhage solution, our first product, or any other product that we're going to build in the next decade. They're going to be a class two, most likely class two software as a medical device. We don't have a hardware, but fortunately or unfortunately, the way you look at it, we're still a medical device.
Mhm.
Right now, we're actually on the path to submit our maternal hemorrhage early risk assessment to FDA in this quarter. So hopefully in the next month
Wow.
we're going to get this submitted to FDA, and hopefully mid this year we're going to receive a clearance if everything goes well. Fingers crossed, no more shutdown and no more slowdowns on the government side. And we're really hoping to be able to be using the solution with at least some of our early adopters and collaborators who we're building and evaluating the models with this year. So who knows? So I'm really hoping this year in the second half we're going to actually be at the bedside with some of our health systems.
I'm so excited for you. Best of luck with that process. I know the FDA process can be a little, long, sometimes tricky. I'm hoping it goes really smoothly and quickly for y'all. But beyond the FDA processes, there's a lot of discussion these days about the ethics of AI and privacy and confidentiality. How is your company addressing those issues head on?
I think there are a couple of different aspects of privacy and confidentiality with AI. I think the problem of confidentiality is about how you use the data and who you
Mhm.
share it with. NOMA, as a company, we're not in the business of sharing data. We do not do that
Right.
in
Okay.
any capacity. We don't plan to
Mhm.
do that. Uh, and it's actually a strategic necessity for us not to be sharing data. Uh, so I think when it comes to privacy, it's about how you use that data. Our
Yeah.
purpose is very clear. We're using the patient data, either past patients where we train our models on, or actual bedside patients. We're only using that data with one purpose, which is delivering and improving these solutions for those problems. We're not a company who's in the business of aggregating data and maybe selling it to
Right.
advertisers for, hey,
Mhm.
selling one more product to patients. It's just not us. It's not our business model. It's not impatient. It's also really not to the benefit of our company, because for a company who actively builds AI, is an asset for us, and we keep that asset to ourselves. So I think from the aspect of privacy and it's really not that different about how hospitals are keeping that data for the patient care. Because when next time you want to go back to the hospital, you don't want to start explaining your entire life to the physician. For the same reason, if you're coming and in the future we're using these AI solutions at the bedside, you don't want to have to know that the algorithms are not working as well as they could for you because the model didn't have access to some of your medical history. Um,
Mm.
Now, about when it comes to security, we're HIPAA compliant, and even though we're early stage startup, we're small, we're HIPAA compliant, and we're trying to get more certification. We always try to take the best approach and keep up with the standards. So we really think about it as core of privacy and patient concerns and security and how we think about those problems.
That's wonderful. It sounds like you're being really thoughtful about it. And I think it's reassuring to hear, as we're all patients at some point, that the goal of the company is not to share these data, to not sell these data. It's worth asking because not
Well, I think it's
every,
important. Believe me, I'm
yeah,
I'm personally someone who's very concerned about my privacy and my uh, and
sure.
my my information and who has it and what they're using for it, and the same way we think about our company.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so in terms of thinking about the patient populations that this could help the most, we know that sociologically speaking, women of color are more likely to have high-risk pregnancies, to have pregnancies that result in maternal mortality. Has your company been thinking through issues of equity as you've been developing the product, A, and then B, in places you might deploy it?
Yeah, I think healthcare equity is actually a significant issue, and for us, it's actually a very top priority. I mean, as someone who's developed and researched in the space of machine learning, even beyond the company as a PhD student, as a researcher, and my co-founder and our other team members in our company who's also been doing this. we've been monitoring how equity and bias has been impacting AI solutions. We've all heard about
Mhm.
stories where surveillance
Yes.
systems are catching certain demographics much more common. And it's really interesting to look at those
Mhm.
results in different countries because maybe the surveillance system in US is capturing, I think, if I'm not wrong, or flagging as high risk, if that's the right way of saying it, Black population. But then you look at the AI models who are being developed in China, they're just capturing someone else, which is really showing that the problem with equity in AI is about the data you're using. And
Mhm.
the approach we took from the get-go, a lot of the times when we look at the medical device space, they look at bias and equity from the factor of, do we have a representative of the population in our data? So for us, we took a step further. Not only we wanted our data to be representative of the population, we ended up collaborating with three health systems. We collected close to
Mm.
500,000 moms' EHR data
Yeah.
from 17 health systems, 17, sorry, three health systems, 17 hospitals, and 10 years of data. So not only we're building these models with representative populations, but we're actually building it with significant number of patients in those populations. So we have statistically significant data sets in every single population. We have substantial Black patients. We have substantial Hispanic patients across financial status.
Uh-oh, y'all, it looks like we are having a little bit of a glitch, but you're back. You were talking about the ways in which you've created a really comprehensive data set across multiple health systems that is very diverse in nature, that is reflective of the US population. That's where we lost you, if you want to pick up
Yeah, and,
there.
and really building not only for and evaluating not only our representative populations, hoping we're equally good, but building and measuring and evaluating we're equally good, but on substantial data sets. That's just how we think about it at the core and prioritize that problem, not only in a second layer of priority, but at the core of how we build our models.
Mhm. So it sounds like you've taken an incredibly methodological approach to this. And you did mention that your partner is a physician. So I'm wondering if you could just take a beat to talk about the individual strengths that you both brought to this and the perspective that has helped shape both your current platform as well as the future of the company.
I think Noma has been and I have been extremely grateful and fortunate with the team that we have. My background, I'm a computer scientist. I have a PhD in machine learning and computer science and AI. My co-founder is a critical care physician who's been building AI for hemodynamic monitoring, which is really everything that's related to your blood pressure, to your cardiovascular system for about 25 years. And he has about
Wow.
30,000 citations. Our VP of Women Health, Dr. Vogel, is this amazing obstetrics anesthesiologist who's led maternal hemorrhage improvement protocols and who's now nationally one of the top leaders in trauma-informed care in obstetrics. And then on the other hand, some of our team members have decades of experience in quality medical devices, and in fact, one of our advisors was one of the first people who brought the first MRI to the FDA in the US. So
Oh,
we've been
wow.
grateful in landing relationships and through these connections of people who are really trying to help us be on the right path and think about this right way. And I think that's one of the most important assets that we have.
Incredible. Any folks in either your team or maybe an advisory board of women who've had these experiences? Or is that something for down the line?
So thankfully, none of the women in our team is has had maternal hemorrhage. But again, we've had Dr. Vogel has been a physician in obstetrics and labor and delivery for decades and has had patients who've had these problems. So really kind of really at the core of making sure that people worked on this problem at the bedside is in the development team and is in the leadership team. Now, I think we definitely would like to bring on as we're going into the market as on advisory board and our team But one of the hardest things to ask people is, hey, in the recruitment side, hey, have you had maternal hemorrhage before? I don't think you should have, but I think that's definitely something we would love to have in our team. And if someone in the audience is interested in contributing to what we do in some capacity, they should definitely reach out to me. I think that's at core, and that's definitely something we're excited about.
Incredible. I have a question that's essentially from a lay perspective because, keeping in mind I primarily research sleep, but I did a project a few years back on maternal mortality in rural spaces, specifically related to preterm birth. And what I learned from that is that once you have one preterm birth, you're far more likely to have another preterm birth. Is it the same with maternal hemorrhage?
Some of those are some of the risk factors. So, for example, the number of deliveries that you have, or if you have
Uh-huh.
history of maternal hemorrhage, if you have history of other related problems of maternal hemorrhage. Now, the problem is that none of these risk factors change it enough that make it clinically like effective to actually do something for that patient. So that's really what we're looking at, those risk factors, but like a couple hundred more risk factors. In fact, we're looking at about 300 variables in real time, which includes medical history, includes demographics, includes vital signs, includes changes of vital signs, and lab results to really capture that dynamicity, but also medical background of that patient that can increase the risk of that patient. So, for
Okay.
example, if you have history of anemia, and if you're anemic, that is as a major risk factor too.
Got it. Okay. That's really helpful to know. Um, well, we don't have a ton of time left, and I know we're going to ask the audience to please put questions in the chat. If they have any, I think you've done such an incredible job of explaining this uh, that people just may not have questions. But I want to talk about a couple things in terms of getting a little more insight on your advice for others and maybe next steps. So my first question would be, given your background. Um, where you started and where you are now, what advice would you give to other folks who are interested in being healthcare entrepreneurs?
I think building something in healthcare it has a couple of very big advantages, and if you're really passionate about a problem, I think you're never going to run out of motivation. In fact,
Mhm,
if at least for me, many times when there's a road, when there's a stone down the road, or a challenge that we have to overcome, sometimes I feel guilty of not being able to move it faster, just because knowing what you're
mhm,
working on is so important, and that you feel like you have to do it. You can't back out. So, which is really amazing to work in a place that motivation is never a problem. But at the same time, one of the challenges in healthcare is patience. So
mm,
really have to make sure you're patient for outcomes, but also at the same time you're planning ahead, because
mm,
when it's by design, healthcare is a slow moving environment, which if I'm
mhm,
a patient, I don't hate it. I definitely don't want anyone to try something crazy on a hinge overnight, or roll out a product that is half baked and then realize, oh no, patients are dying because of it. But that really means, as an entrepreneur, you have to think differently than maybe a software entrepreneur has to think, because you really have to be careful about how you're doing it. The same way you can improve patient lives, you can impact it, and that slowness by design needs more patience, and I think needs more proactive planning. And that's something we really learned on in the first early years of our company. Now, I think the other thing I would talk about is how you develop things. Often we see that technologists and entrepreneurs, they think about an amazing solution, and that impact the solutions is impact in fact amazing, but it's not really a comprehensive solution for the general population. So maybe it
mm,
works in a niche environment, but it doesn't fit the clinical workflow for most health systems. So really going out there, having proactive conversations, making sure that you're building things that really work the way that it's supposed to work for your users, whether they're patients, whether they're providers, is one of the most important things. Because if you're not building the right way down the road, you realize all these studies that you've done were not the right studies, or all the designs you've done, or FDA approvals, if you need those, are done, that were not the right approvals. So I think that's one of the things, again, that if you're entrepreneur in healthcare, you have to think about it from day one, and not at the testing stage.
That is incredible insight, and really, coming this from a research perspective, you're bringing up things that I probably wouldn't have thought about were I to enter into entrepreneurship tomorrow. Just for a sense of scale, approximately when did you start thinking about these questions? And then, give us a sense of the timeline of your journey, if you would.
Yeah, I think for us, especially what was very helpful for me, especially as a technical founder, was having a clinical co-founder, which really meant
Mm,
we kind of had this thinking from day one, especially because my co-founder was a physician who has led development of AI on the academic side for two
mhm,
decades at that point. I think a lot of these mistakes he had already made, so I'll attribute it to him and some of our other team members, like our Tracy Vogel, who's an OB anesthesiologist, of having to think this way from the beginning. So for us, that was an incredible, for me, that was an incredible resource, an incredible opportunity to have them in our team. But that might not be the case for everyone. And that's why I think it becomes very important to make sure you fail fast and you take the right directions. So I was
I like
fortunate, and I've been fortunate on every single day when we think about the next problem that we're going to work on.
I like that. I'm gonna take that away from this, like, learn to fail fast. We do have a question from the audience. What is the biggest technical challenge that Noma currently faces?
Um, which one? I think there's a lot of technical challenges. I think um, for for our first product, I think the technical challenges are less are less cumbersome for me because this is space that maybe we're closer to the submission. So maybe if you asked me that question a year ago, maybe there
Mm,
would be a lot of things. But what we do is we build our own machinery models. So we don't
okay.
call LLMs, right? We're building models on top of data that LLMs don't see, and data is often the biggest problem. You have an
Mm,
amazing problem. The financials are there, and by financials I mean the ROI for the customer. The business model makes sense, but when you start looking into what you can build, you realize you cannot build the right solution because the
mm,
data is not there. So sometimes the healthcare AI problem is the data is like, do we have the outcome? Turns out we do have a lot of data, but health systems don't actually record the outcome in a consistent way. So you realize, well, there's no way we can build that if we don't
mm,
know who's, for example, hemorrhaging. In this case, we know, but or sometimes you realize that they're not collecting that data. There's a lot of
okay.
data produced every year in the health systems, but in fact, a lot of that data is not being archived. EHRs are because they're mandated, and images are. But when you're talking about bedside monitors, most
Mm,
health systems don't archive them, which really, again, the problem is, so how am I going to build the AI for that in an accurate way that actually merits deploying and making sure we're going to see that outcome that we want to see in the patient care and we're going to see the ROI. So I think data is one of the biggest challenges. And after that, integration. Uh,
mm,
Integration with EHRs is definitely something that has a challenge, but has been streamlined with introduction of fire protocols and a lot of the government mandates that make sure that hospitals have them, have support them. And now most EHRs actually have a pretty good support for fire. But still, when you go beyond EHRs, when you're looking at bedside monitors, integrating with some of those devices is not standardized. It's not easy. You have to build those relationships with those companies either through your partners or directly, and these are challenges again when you're building those solutions. If you want to really deploy them, you have to think about it in day one. Can I do that, and what would be the pathway for that?
wow, that is really, really insightful. And as someone who works with data, I definitely see the challenges that you're bringing to this conversation as very real and very big. And I'm so glad that you've been able to have access to great data. We do have another question. When we talk about these blanket conversations, how can we relate that to the physician-patient interactions, which are unique? Oh, I love that. So kind of taking it from like the data, the big picture, down to the finer grain patient-physician conversations. How would for instance, a physician talk about this product to their patient?
I think that's a great question. At the same time, I think for our first product, most patients may not know that exists. The
I
same
wondered
way
about that.
most patients
Yeah,
actually don't know there's risk of a problem called maternal hemorrhage, which
sure.
thankfully is not bad actually if you don't know if you're having a baby. I would certainly prefer not to know. But so I think the same time for this product, that most of the patients may not actually know that it exists because it's being used by the physicians. Patients are not a user. And
Mhm.
but there's other products that I think we're going to build down the road that we're going to see a little bit of that. And it's just something that we have to think about. I might say that I don't have a great answer for it on how to inform the patient, but I think that's definitely a problem. There's a non-technical problem, but for some downstream products that we have to think about it. So who knows? Maybe in a couple of years I would have a good answer for that.
Well, I wanted to say they had a follow-up comment. My name is Fernando Cisneros Barrera. Thank you for your time. I would echo that. This has been really a wonderful use of my lunch break, certainly, and I think a lot of other folks as well. Before I let you go, though, I do have one more question for you. And of course, if something else comes up in the chat, we'll address that as well. But I want to know what's next for NOMA AI.
Yeah, I think in the short term, we're definitely focused and excited to bring our first solution for maternal hemorrhage to the bedside.
Mhm.
As as a dad and as a father and as a husband, I think that's a huge passion for me, and a huge priority, obviously, for the company. But at the same time, we've been proactively building partnerships. The reality is that maternal hemorrhage is not the only complication of the same type.
Sure.
In fact, even in OB, in maternal health, there are other problems, hypertension. That nationally have recognized now, thankfully, as what how is it impacting patients, or sepsis even in OB is actually one of the leading causes of maternal mortality. And
Mm,
some of these problems we can already bring as the next solution for on top of the same technology and platform that we're building, and we're going to continuously expand to those solutions. Now, once on the other aspect, we build partnerships that not only we're bringing EHR data, but also we're going to be bringing some of those monitoring device data. So we're going to start slowly move to closer to not only just early risk assessment, but to proactive detection. And I don't want to call it detection because FDA would not be happy with that. It's not a diagnostic tool, but
sure.
we really want to be able to now say, hey, this patient that we told you is high risk and is getting there, is going to get
Yeah.
there in 20 minutes and really create that intervention point. And then the same thing for other complications. Again, that's how we view ourselves and how we're going to grow as a company.
Incredible. Couple more questions from the audience before I let you go. The first is around, your idea is very exciting. Are you afraid of someone else poaching your idea that might have greater resources? Seems like there's a lot of big players in the healthcare and tech space.
Um, I think as an entrepreneur, you're always afraid of that.
Sure.
Um, Now, I think as a company, we have a multi-factor approach uh, to protecting our IP and our company's essentially business, because it's not always just IP. Um, for some of our products, downstream products that we're going to start working and hopefully bringing to FDA in next year, we actually have patents,
Great.
and or we have pending patents. Now, a lot of the times in AI and software, you cannot patent, but it's also a factor of kind of coming to the market first and then getting into a market and creating a footprint. One of the important things that our products has are similar to EHRs. Not at the same scope, but what I call the stickiness factor. It's very
Mm,
hard to move from one solution to another when it involves clinical workflows and when it
okay.
involves training, when it involves getting used to. So I think that first mover advantage is going to give us an opportunity. But again, we're not going to remain as a company who's just building one solution. We're going to bring a panel of these solutions. For some of those solutions, we're going to have patents, and we're going to protect them through patents, and that would allow us to have comprehensive solutions that, yes, we're going to probably have competition. We're not going to be surprised, but there's going to be some of those things that we're not going to have competition, and that would allow us to have a much more comprehensive solution in the market and give us an advantage.
Salim, you sound very well prepared. One of the things that I think is fascinating is the ways in which AI is evolving a lot more quickly, for instance, in our patent system and our legal system, but you definitely are well on top of it. I'm going to end with one final question for the audience, which is, do you think most AI in healthcare, this is a broad one, do you think most AI in healthcare will be engineered for physicians or patients?
That's a great question. I don't,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think there's going to be both. I think that there's going to be a lot of AI for patients, and there's going to be a lot of AI for physicians. I think at the beginning there's going to be more AI for patients, depending on the type of AI, obviously, because it's very hard to provide something that's diagnostics to patients directly because it's a higher regulatory pathway. But with clinical pathways and solutions like that, and education and assessments. I think those are tools that we're going to see very fast, especially because of the lower regulatory hurdle of many of those things. But I think, and maybe I hope that we're going to see a lot more solutions on the clinical side, but
Yeah.
not in the context of, hey, take this hammer that can process your data and tell you interesting stuff, but in a very focused, actionable way that can actually make measurable impact on patients' lives. I hope that we're going to see a second wave that's going to be focused on the provider side.
Wonderful. Well, your passion for health, healthcare, maternal health are so evident, as well as your technical expertise. We are so delighted to have had this 45 minute to learn from you. And thank you so much for being a part of our FemTech Fridays. Um, let's keep up the connections. I think you'd be an incredible guest speaker for some of our med students. So thanks again for joining us, Salim, and everybody have a wonderful Friday. Thank
I
you.
appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having us, and thank you for everyone who took the time to listen into it. If they're interested in what we do, we would love to connect it. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and